Hello and welcome to Racers Now. Now, it might be 4 months away, but I think now is a perfect time to take a first look at what some say is the biggest and best race in the flat racing calendar. That is the Arc de Triomphe at Paris Longchamp in early October. And why is it an ideal time, you might ask? We're over 4 months away. Well, the English Derby, the French Derby, the Oaks, and some other Group 1 races are already in the bag. And this is where really the market starts to take shape. As usual, the Epsom Derby winner is usually favourite for the Arc in the immediate aftermath. But we did have an impressive winner of the French Derby just 1 day later than the Epsom Derby. So there's plenty to look into and quite a lot to go at this stage. Like I say, as usual, the Epsom Derby winner, City of Troy, is the favourite for the Arc at this stage. He's at 5-1. But what you have to remember is no one knows really where City of Troy is going to be going. He was very impressive when winning at Epsom. I doubted him. He proved the doubters wrong. He proved me wrong. But two things with City of Troy in regards to the Arc specifically. He might have to prove how good he is again this season, given that, we said that the Derby, there were some contenders that just didn't turn up at the Derby for one reason or another. So I think between now and the end of the season, whether that season end in Paris or Del Mar or at Ascot, I think City of Troy is going to have to prove himself again. Yes, there's been a lot of hype and praise since his winning at Epsom, but the market, although the top three in the market all finished first, second, and third at Epsom, some of the other hot contenders like Economics, Hidden Law, etc., didn't run. So I think he's got to prove it there. And we're not being clever after the event. We did say that there was a lack of talent running in the Derby, given that 4 of the 5 Epsom Derby trial winners didn't run in the race itself. City of Troy is currently the betting favourite for 2 dirt races, the Eclipse, the King George, and the Arc. So clearly, if he is aimed at the Arc, he's a major player. That's why he's 5-1. He is going to be bang up there on ratings after his destruction, if you like, in the Epsom Derby, where he was very impressive. But does a race like the Arc, the hustle and bustle, the probable soft ground in early October, does that suit City of Troy? And if he does go to dirt, which the Ballydoyle boys have been pretty adamant all year, really, before he ran out in the Guineas, after he ran in the Guineas, that he's sticking to the programme. Guineas, Derby, dirt. I think if he goes on to dirt, will he ever come back to turf? I'm not sure. And like I say, is he really going to be an Arc horse with the potential soft ground? That is surely not to City of Troy's liking. Second in the market currently, and this is the French Derby winner, Luc de Vega. Absolutely dominated the French Derby over the weekend. Can we call it a Derby? It's only over 10 furlongs, not 12 there at Chantilly, regardless of what the trip was on the day. Very, very impressive. Luc de Vega might not have been known to many racing fans, including myself, really, before the weekend, because that was only just his 3rd start of his whole career. But he was dominant in the race itself, drawn well, travelled all over him, handles the soft ground, unbeaten now in 3 starts. A maiden, a conditions race, and the French Derby this year alone. Didn't run at all as a 2-year-old. That is not bad at all. Luc de Vega is 7-1 for the Arc and is sure to be targeted at that race from this point, surely. French horse, French Derby winner, etc. You could easily see a typical French Arc campaign from now on with Luc de Vega, maybe a mid-season break, maybe the Pre-Niel trial over course and distance in September, back to Paris for the first Sunday in October. It's a well-trodden and well-practiced path by French contenders. And of the 2 that have covered so far, the 2 bang at the top of the market at 5-1 and 7-1, you'd much prefer to be back in Luc de Vega than City of Troy, purely on the fact that Luc de Vega is a much more likely runner than City of Troy at this stage. Economics still sits in their anything, it could be anything category, having bolted up in the Dante, but he did skip the Derby, and another where we have no idea where Economics may or may not run next, to be honest. William Haggis has been particularly adamant that Economics is going to be going slowly, softly, gently with this horse. He knows he's got a good one on his hands. He doesn't want to ruin him by running him too often or too quick of a turnaround after the Dante. He is currently 14-1 for the Arc, another race that he would need to be supplemented into. But wherever Economics turns up, and it could well be the Arc, he's going to be a big, big player. Hopefully we see him before October, clearly. One horse that has to be in the Arc conversation at this stage is another one of the Oaks Classic winners, and that is Azelia. She won the Oaks at Epsom on May the 31st. I mean, many have commented that she's a small horse, so will take some managing throughout the season. But Dermot Weld is a master at doing so, particularly with fillies. Remember the likes of Tanawa that he's had in previous years. But Azelia in the opposition that were in front of her on the day at Epsom, she could hardly have been more impressive, really, on the day at Epsom. And what she's done so far this year, 2 starts, both winning in dominant fashion. I mean, yes, it's pretty certain, time will prove, but it's pretty certain that the Oaks was a below average renewal, and the favourite Ylang did bomb out in that race. But Azelia did what she had to do, won by daylight, really, between her and the rest of the field, and won easily. I mean, if you watch it back, this Azelia, she was quite wide round Tapnam Corner. Chris Hayes, I thought, gave her a perfect ride. She passed most of her rivals in the straight. She hardly got off the bridle if you watch it back. They were strung out like washing in behind her. You can only beat what's in front of you on the day, as SD tells us, and Azelia did just that in impressive fashion. Now, it might sound cliche, but Dermot Weld doesn't mess around when he's got a good one and only travels them outside of Ireland when he believes they'll win. And Julie, she did in the Oaks, but remember back to Haas and etc. He doesn't travel them for a holiday. Dermot Weld. The key with Azelia is that she is owned by French-based owner and breeder, the Aga Khan, and all roads for Azelia lead to the Arc, with her possibly taking in the Prix Vermeil, that is a Group 1 over course and distance, a trial type race, although it is a Group 1 in September. The Oaks was only Azelia's 4th start. She will stay. She's proven that in Epsom, has won on soft ground before. There's a lot to like about Azelia from an anti-post perspective. And at 14-1, I would be tempted to put her up as a bet. And I wouldn't argue with anyone that is putting her up as a bet, but the form and the lack thereof in the Oaks that will be proven in the coming weeks and months is putting me off putting her up as an official bet right now at 14-1. Her form of the Oaks, purely on, for example, Racing Post ratings, is some way off the top of the market and some way off what you need to be going and winning an Arc. But like I say, I wouldn't argue with anyone that fancies Azelia at this stage, a definite contender. The 3-year-old dominance of the Arc from a few years ago has waned over the last few years. Only 3 of the last 10, actually, of Arc winners have come from the classic generation. So much more of a level playing field than what we might have thought it would be. And if you'd have asked me 5 or 6 years ago, I'd have told you for definite it's a 3-year-old race. But recent form and winners has proven that it's not quite the case. Yes, of course, the 3-year-olds carry less weight than their older counterparts, and the 3-year-old fillies carry even less weight. But weight for age scale is there for a reason. It's been there for many, many years. The best 4-year-old performance that we've seen so far this year is from White Birch, who was mega impressive at the Curragh in the Tats Gold Cup, Group 1 on rain-softened ground, seeing off Auguste Rodin in that race. I mean, wildly impressive White Birch, just cantered all over Auguste Rodin. We know that he's a good horse, a bit in and out, don't get me wrong, but he appeared to run his race that day at the Curragh, last year's Epsom Derby winner, Irish Derby winner, etc. That was over 10 furlongs for White Birch, but he has got Group 1 form over 1.5 miles, including when he was 3rd in the Epsom Derby last year. That was a serious performance from White Birch. And again, similar comments apply to White Birch, they would to Economics, and City of Troy. Clearly, wherever he does turn up, he's going to be a massive player. But I can see this White Birch maybe running in the Arc, but I don't think it'll be the main target of the year. They might just run there when they get there, if you see what I mean. He's going to have other big days between now and then, possibly at Royal Ascot, possibly in the King George, possibly in the Irish Champion. So he's going to be a busy boy, with the Arc maybe coming at the end of a campaign, whereas horses like Luc de Vega, all eyes and all roads lead to Paris, even at this early stage of the season. White Birch is 25-1 for the Arc as we speak. He probably should be shorter on what we've seen from him a couple of weeks ago at the Curragh. And again, if he does turn up, it will be a lovely addition to the race. Passenger, like White Birch, is by Ulysses, a young sire who's doing really quite well at the minute. Ulysses, an impressed first time up this season, did Passenger at Chester for Sir Michael Stout. Although I wouldn't have him down as an Arc contender on the basis that A, he likes quicker ground, and B, I think he's going to be better over 10 furlongs, almost certainly going to prefer 10 to 12 furlongs. He's 33-1. Wouldn't be for me as an Arc contender, but an interesting horse for this season, no doubt. And another horse that we haven't seen so far this year, but one I'm really looking forward to and really interested in, is Continuous. Aidan O'Brien trained last year's St. Leger winner and finished 5th in the Arc, and was unlucky not to be placed in the Arc with a luckless passage in the business end of the Arc de Triomphe last year. Continuous wouldn't have got anywhere near winning. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Ace Impact was wildly impressive in last year's Arc, but he struggled to get a clear run at the business end. And if he did get a clear run, I'm pretty sure Continuous may have been 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, maybe. So that 5th maybe underestimates how good Continuous ran in that race last year. And like I said, he did a lot of winning before then, winning the St. Leger, won the great voltage at York, etc. I think from a small sample size at Aidan O'Brien's older horses, I think Continuous could prove by the end of this year to be the best older horse in training with Aidan O'Brien. Possibly a big statement to make with Auguste Rodin hanging around as well. But, I mean, he had a setback earlier in the season. That's why we've not seen him to this point yet. He's likely to be seen Continuous at Royal Ascot in the Group 2 Hardwick Stakes. That's over 1.5 miles. Then he's going to be looking at the King George or the Irish Champions Stakes thereafter. And I think at 33-1, I do actually think Continuous is a bet. So he's going up on screen there, 33-1. That would be my fancy for the Arc at this very early stage, admittedly. But I do think he will perform well at Ascot. And then he's going to really prove himself at the top level. I think he's a top-class horse. He's not had the opportunity to really show it this year through injury. And last year, St. Ledger winners nowadays are often underestimated or often looked down upon. But he's going to be dropped back to 1.5 miles, and he's a proper horse this year, I think, Continuous. So that will be on the races now, P&L. SD is aware of it, and it'll be in the description below. But 33-1 is available, and Continuous is the horse I like for the Arc at this very, very early stage. Another O'Brien runner worth noting at this point is Opera Singer. Like Continuous, she was injured in the early part of this season. She made a comeback in the Irish 1,000 guineas with a very good second. And what was the first run of the year? Everyone seemed delighted with that. I know she didn't win the race, but looked very promising. And Opera Singer actually won on Arc Day last year in the Marcel Boussac, the race for 2-year-old fillies. And Ryan Moore said afterwards that he thinks that they'll be back at Paris in a year's time on Arc Day with Opera Singer, with a view to the Arc itself, the big one. But it is a long way between a second in the Irish Guineas over 1 mile in May to 1.5 miles at Longchamp in October. She is yet to be raced by, beyond 1 mile, but you know, I think she's definitely one to keep an eye on, this Opera Singer. I mean, it might be a big ask for her to be trained for the Arc from this stage, given that she started the season late. Her first start was over 1 mile. A second start looks likely to be over 1 mile at Royal Ascot. So do you want to get to the middle of June with a horse that's never ran over 1 mile with a view to the Arc? Probably not. But I mean, she'll be a contender. We know that Aidan O'Brien can work wonders with these fillies. But in a roundabout fashion, I'm saying that she may well not be aimed at the Arc. And as a result of that, she isn't an anti-post bet at 25-1. But she could be a contender if aimed there. The final one to mention on my list is Godolphin's Arabian Crown, a talented horse who won a Group 3 as a juvenile and looked really quite exciting when winning the Sandown Classic trial in April. Really straight as an arrow in that race, galloped away from and won that race with a lot of authority. Not seen since, has missed the Derby, a horse that must have soft ground. So Charlie Appleby quite early on actually said that he wouldn't be going to the Derby, but I would be interested in where he goes next. He'd be an ideal candidate for Paris, in my opinion. A 3-year-old with a preference for soft ground, obviously beautifully bred, being owned by Godolphin. It'll be interesting how they campaign him this summer, though, with that ground preference. Will they be able to find racers and ground that suits him? Maybe not. We might not see a lot of Arabian Crown this summer, as maybe is headed more for a winter campaign or an autumn campaign. I could see Arabian Crown running in one of the Arc trials, the Prix in September, and he certainly isn't a bet at 33-1. But I'd much prefer Continuous at that price, for example. But he's definitely one to keep an eye on, the Arabian Crown. He is going to need soft ground. At this point, we're going to be handing over, or I'm going to be referring to notes that I've been in contact with friend of the channel and French racing lover, Andy Humphrey, and he has sent me some notes on some of the Arc contenders and a couple of the French horses to flag at this stage. I'm no expert on the French form. Andy Humphrey is, and these are his snippets, and his Twitter handle is going to be on the screen. Firstly, Hump has flagged up to me Delius, who is currently 40-1, trained by Europe's most winning ever trainer, Jean-Claude Rouget, and last year's Arc winner. He's actually won 2 of the last 4 Arcs, Jean-Claude Rouget. He knows a thing or two about middle distance horses, let's put it that way. But yeah, this Delius is tried and tested over at the distance, so we know he stays 1.5 miles. He's yet to contest a real top-notch race in his young career. He's unbeaten in 2 starts, but Hump tells me that, interestingly, this is the only horse in Jean-Claude Rouget's yard that is owned by Coolmore. So that's something to note there. Beautifully bred by Franco. He's got an entry, this Delius, in a race over course and distance, the Grand Prix de Paris, the same course and distance as the Arc. That's next month in July. So we'll find out potentially how good he is there. And of course, if Delius is winning that race, the Grand Prix de Paris, which is a Group 1, he certainly will not be 40-1 for the Arc thereafter. So that's one to keep an eye on. And number 2 on Hump's list is Gala Real or Gala Real, a 3-year-old filly. We've said it earlier about the weight allowances that the 3-year-old fillies get, and they do have a good record in this race. Possibly, maybe you might want to extend the data to this century rather than the last 10 years. But yeah, the likes of Enable have won this race as a 3-year-old, etc. Trev way back when. So plenty of good performances from 3-year-old fillies over the years. And this Gala Real has been flagged by Hump. Winner of the last 2 starts, most recently at listed level at Longchamp, which is not very at the higher echelons of French racing, of course, at listed level. But want to take note, if you go back and watch a race, which I have done on Hump's suggestion, it was on soft ground. Well worth watching it back. She was widest of the track as they come round into the straight at Longchamp, and really did motor home in quick fashion in the final 2 furlongs. She's 25-1 for the Arc as it stands. But the key to that piece of form with Garda Real is that she beat a horse called Adventure in that race, and Adventure actually went on to win a Group 3 at Chantilly on French Derby weekend by 7 lengths. So that form of Gala Real from that listed race, well and truly boosted just a few weeks later by Aventure. And Aventure is on the list at the bottom of the screen. He's in there currently at 20-1 for the Arc. So Gala Real, one to keep an eye on there. She's off to the Diane next, the Prix de Diane, or the French Oaks, as you may want to call it. And that's a race that usually every single year has a big impact on the betting, the anti-post betting for the Arc, and often produces the winner of the Arc as well. Look back to Trev, etc. So there's 2 from our French expert Hump to keep an eye on. Plenty covered and plenty to look forward to in the Arc. Yes, it may sound absolutely miles away, but it's always good on these anti-post markets to try and pick out some value early. And I think that value at this stage is continuous at 33-1. Plenty to look forward to, as usual, here on Racers Now with Roy Lascott just around the corner. So thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.